Hello everyone, this is Dr.R.Thulasiram, Associate Professor, Department of Social Sciences, Faculty of Agricultural Sciences, Bharat Institute of Higher Education and Research, Chennai. So today, the topic for discussion is population and its theories. So this lecture is coming under the course Fundamentals of Agricultural Economics, and this is a basic course. And this course serves as a basis for all the other course which is related to economics. Say, for example, production economics, farm management, agricultural marketing, trade, price policy, export courses, agricultural finance, banking and cooperatives, etc. So for all these other courses, this course will serve as a basis because this course consists of all the important basic concepts. So this population is also one of the basic concepts. Now, we may have a doubt. Population, in what way it is related to the topic of economics? That is what we are going to see in this class. Let us move on to the topic. So before going very deep into the topic, let me tell you about a topic called factors of production. So not only in agriculture, in any business, when someone wants to produce something, he needs to go for different factors, that is determinants that are responsible to produce any commodity. Now, the factors of production in agriculture are basically, it is of three types: land, labor, and capital. So land, that you know, that is a free gift of nature. It is not an artificial thing that we can produce. Labor, it is, of course, it is a person who works for producing something, who may work under a private company or a government company, etc. Capital is this third factor of production. Why the capital is mentioned here as capital goods? Because capital is not only the money. Money will also be included in capital, but it is not alone the capital. Capital in the sense, any good which is already in a produced form, which in turn will produce another good. Say, for example, you take tractor. It is already in a produced form, which will produce a crop by helping it for cultivation. Likewise, any capital, you take coffee maker, it is already a produced good, which in turn produces a coffee, right? So that is called as capital good. So you need all these three things to produce any commodity. Out of which labor, it is one of the factors that we use for producing something, that is human being. So labor is directly involved with production, I mean population, right? It depends on population. If the population is more, you have enough labor numbers. If the population is very, very low, you don't have enough people to produce, to work to produce any product. So that is why this population is somewhat related to labor, and that is why I came up with this introduction. Now, there are different qualities of labor. That is based on the race, a labor can be efficient. Based on the climatic conditions, he may be efficient. Some owners, they may give some extra amenities, extra payment, extra bonus to the laborers, because of which they can become more efficient. Those are all qualitative aspects of labor. Now, if you consider the quantitative aspects of labor, it is all about the number of labor available, right? So that depends on the size of a population in any country. So the quantity of labor available in a country, that depends on the population of any country, right? So that is what mentioned here. This quantitative aspect of labor refers to the size of working population in a country. And there are several theories also that comes up with regard to population. They are Malthusian Theory, and another one is Optimum Theory. Right? Malthusian Theory takes food supply into account, and Optimum Theory that takes per capita output into account. That will be dealt in the future slides. Right. Let me introduce about population. Now, of course, it is very basic. You need to know about population. It is a distinct group of individuals, whether that group comprises a nation or a group of people with a common characteristic features. In statistics, it is a pool of individuals from which a statistical sample is drawn for a study. So if I want to study a particular group of people, I will select some samples, representatives from that particular area. That is also a population. In sociology, it is nothing but the collection of human beings, right? So demography is a social science which entails the statistical study of population. In simpler terms, it is the number of people in a city or town or region or country or a particular community or a world. Okay, so normally we express this population numbers in census. That is the process of collecting, analyzing, compiling the data with regard to number of people who lives in a country. Right. The next one is population size. So it is defined as the number of individuals present in a subjectively designated geographical range. So despite the simplicity in its concept, locating all individuals in a particular place and counting all these individuals is never going to be an easy task. It is nearly impossible. So what we can do, we can count some individuals in a sample area. By keeping this average, we can get a overall larger population of the overall size of a country. Or else you can simply find out the population density, that is the number of individuals per area or volume of a habitat. If you take that number, you can give a generalized statement. You can take an average of the overall size of a country. So the size and density both are important in describing the current status of population and potentially for making predictions about how it could be changed in the future. Because if you want to forecast the future population growth, forecasting means predicting the future range. Okay, so to do such things, you need to know the data of both the size and also the density of population. As I told you, size is just a number of individuals in a particular area, and population density is the number of individuals present in per square meter of area. Right. We have different types of populations. Right. One is finite, infinite, existent, and hypothetical population. So these things are very basic in nature. Right. So this finite, the name itself indicates you can count the number of people living in an area. It can be counted. In other words, it is the population of all individuals or objects that are finite, that can be countable. The finite population is more advantageous than the infinite population. So examples of this finite population are employees of a company, potential consumer in a market, etc. The next one is the infinite population. It is also known as uncountable population, in which the counting of units in the population is not at all possible. So what happens here? You don't have any boundaries. That's why you cannot count it. Example, the population of stars in space, the number of red blood cells in a person's body, and so on. Example of infinite population is the number of germs in the patient's body is also, you can quote it as an example. So these are all the population that are infinite in nature. Then existent population, it is defined as the population of concrete individuals. That is a whole lot of holistic view of a person. You get a whole person, like a person or a books, number of books, etc. That is the thing. But whereas hypothetical population, which whose unit is not available in solid form and is known as hypothetical population. The population consists of set of observations, objects that are all something in common. Examples: an outcome of rolling a dice, the outcome of tossing a coin. So these populations are considered to be hypothetical in nature. Right. So next concept, very important concept, is population pyramid. So by pyramid, they can tell few concepts about population, the structure of the population in a country. The structure of a population in the sense, it depends, it just conveys the meaning of age and sex relationships. Like, how many male people are there, how many female are there, how many of the population is actually youngsters, how many of them are children, how many of them are age-old people. So those kind of things can be explained by using pyramids. So based on different structure of pyramids, you can get different meaning based on the composition of the age groups that I told you: youngsters, children, and age-old people. So there are three types of population pyramid available. One is expansion pyramid, second one is constrictive pyramid, third one is stationary pyramid. The first one is expansion pyramid. Here you can see it is triangular in shape, wherein each group displays a bar shorter than one preceding it. It symbolizes that more people die as we move towards the pyramid. When we go through the pyramid, more people die. So it indicates the base is a lengthy one, which indicates a high birth rate, right? and it gets taper, more taper at the top. It is very small at the top. That indicates lesser life expectancy of a region. That is, the more and more the age goes, the more and more will be the death rate. And at the base, you can see at this shape, the base is since the lengthy one, you can see the 0 to 4 age and 5 to 9, 10 to 4. The base is more, usually have high fertility rates. But if you compare at the top surface, you can see very, very low life expectancies. That is the maximum years that a person can live will be very, very minimum and meager. So many third world countries, they have expansive population pyramid. This kind of pyramid will be seen in many third world countries, that is underdeveloped countries, where the birth rate will be very much high, but they will have low percentage of young people, and also the death rate will be very, very, the person who enjoys their last time, their age, in their life, they'll be very less. Life expectancy will be very, very low. So this you can see in countries like Somalia, etc. Next one is constrictive pyramid. Here you can see there is a slight reduction in the younger group of age. It is the opposite of the expansive pyramid. And the life expectancy is higher. You can see at the top, it is not very small. It is not very short. It is somewhat bigger. So life expectancy is higher and living conditions are better, indicating a high number of older citizens. So when a region has a good place to live on, okay, if it is considered to be a good place to live on, the life expectancy will be higher. That is, more and more age-old people can live. Example, you can take London. So in our country, when we go out of our house, we can mostly see youngsters and children out there playing outside. But when you go to London and all, it is costliest city in the world. It is one of the costliest cities in the world, where you can see many age-old people roaming here and there, because almost most of the things are very, it is free of cost for age-old people. The living condition is very good, so they can enjoy their life even at the older ages. So the life expectancy is very, very high, and you can see higher number of older citizens there. Despite this, a decrease in population is seen due to fewer birth rates compared to the death rate. Death rate is very more, and birth rate is very, very less. The third one is stationary pyramid, where it is rectangular in shape, indicating equal distribution of people across all age groups. A slight tapering at the top denotes more death occurring among the older people, which is quite natural. But a stable birth rate indicates the use of birth control measures. You can see the birth rate is very, very stable. And life expectancy, the maximum years that a human being can live in those areas, is high due to better living conditions. Living conditions are better because the medical services may be conducive, it may be free of cost, etc. And this shows somewhat equal proportion of population in each age group. All the three age group that we have discussed so far, it is of equal in nature. And there is not a decrease or increase in population. It is found to be stable. And that is why this is called a stationary pyramid. Right. So, as I told you, the population, when it keeps on increasing, we need to go for some control. Right. So, we can follow several types of control measures. On a social measure, economic measure, and you have other measures also that we will discuss. The first measure that we can follow is minimum age of marriage. As fertility depends on age of marriage, so the minimum age of marriage should be raised. In India, minimum age for marriage is 21 years for men and 18 years for women. Has to be fixed by law. And this law should be firmly implemented, and people should also be made aware of this publicly. And raising the status of women, when they get into all the walks of life on par with men, when there is no discrimination, their living conditions economically it will get improved, and they will get education. They can migrate to a city where they will restrict the size of their family. That also will restrict the population. And spread of education. No, education not only, it cannot directly have an impact on reducing the population, but it can change the outlook of people. Okay, men's normally, the educated men, they prefer to delay marriage. Even the people who do doctorates, they would have got married after 31, 32, and they adopt small family norms. And the educated women are health conscious and avoid frequent pregnancies, and thus helping in lower birth rates. One who gets educated, they can avoid getting pregnant all the time. They can at least avoid the number of times at least. So this is one of the things. And next one is adoption, right? So some parents do not have child. Instead of going for a treatments, medical treatments, which cost them huge amount of money, they can go for another option of adopting a child, so that a person who is already existing a children that can be adopted by a couple, so that it reduces the population again. And there may be some change that we can bring in social outlook. Okay, marriage should not no longer be considered as social binding. Issueless, women should not be locked down upon. It is their personal intent, whether to get married or not. It is their personal thing. So that we need to give space for personal thinking and personal judgments. Right. Some of the economic measures are also there. So employment opportunities. When you create more and more employment opportunities, the employment will get raised. So in rural areas, if you see, there is a disgusting unemployment. That is, they have more number of people working, but the work that they do is very, very little. Okay, the work that they do is very, very little, but the people available there is more in number. So the efficiency of individual labor, that is per capita output, that is the output created by one individual labor, is very, very less. So if you give them some job, they can migrate from a rural area to urban area, so that they can check the population growth by having a new style of, by leading a new style of life. And development of agriculture and industry. What happens when the agriculture industry are properly developed? Okay, when their income is getting increased, they will improve their standard of living, and they will start adopting small family norms, because they will move themselves to the city, so where they follow small family norms, like a couple and a children, a couple and a boy, or a couple and a girl. And standard of living, if there is an improved standard of living, okay, large family norms will not work out. According to A.K. Das Gupta, those who earn less than ₹100 per month have on the average a reproduction rate of 3.4 children, and those who earn more than that money, they have a reproduction rate of 2.8 children. That is, the more and more the income level, standard of living, it goes up, the less and less the reproduction rate will be. And urbanization, it is on the record that people in urban areas have low birth rate. Technically, it is true, it is a proven fact, than those who are living in rural areas. So urbanization should therefore be encouraged, right? Small town should become a cosmopolitan city, and the village people can migrate to a nearby town. A village can become slowly become a block or taluk or a small town. So these kind of things can reduce the population. Some of the other measures are late marriage, self-control, that it is about us, family planning, incentives. The government in some of the countries, both for increasing the population and also for checking, preventive checks for population, for both the purposes. Some of the countries, the government themselves are giving some incentives of the citizens of their country. And employment to women can also can change the outlook of the people, how they think. Right. So now, in economics point of view, how this population is very important. In what way we need to know about population, right? So there are three theories of population: Malthusian theory, optimum theory, and theory of demographic transition. First, we'll see about Malthusian theory of population. This was proposed by Robert Malthus in the year 1798 in his book Essay on the Principles of Population. So according to Robert Malthus, the size of the population of a country is dependent on production of food grains. That is, when you have an amount of food grains, that should be enough to feed the available population. Okay, this population is heavily dependent on the amount of food grains that we produce. Okay, that only can feed the overall population. Otherwise, not all the people in a country can eat. And second one is, population tends to grow in geometric progression. That is, you can see in this figure, the y-axis denotes population. It grows very quickly, rapid growth. You can see 2, 4, 6, 8, 16, 32 and all. But whereas in the x-axis, if you see, the food supply, food production tends to grow in arithmetic progression. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Very slowly you can see, right? So the population is growing very faster rate, and the food supply is growing at a slower rate. We don't have enough food to feed the entire population. So this is what Malthus comes up with. And population increase at the faster rate than the food production. It is the summary. And what can we do? How can we check this, right? So we can either go for one of these methods, preventive checks or positive checks. Preventive checks, that is what we can do on our own. Either we can follow celibacy, that is Some few people, they may not have any interest towards having a family or sexual relationships, marriage, etc. Late marriage, self-control, having only one children for a family, these things. Positive check, it reduces the growth of population by increasing the death rate. It will happen automatically. We cannot bring famines, epidemics, wars, earthquakes, floods. It will come automatically. So the concept is simple. If people do not adopt preventive checks, nature will tend to be furious and impose certain checks to arrest the growth of population. And they are known as positive checks. Malthus recommended the use of preventive checks if mankind was to escape from the nature's positive check that is necessary, right? So if you don't want those things, you have to yourself, no, you have to reduce the population, right? The second theory is optimum theory of population. That is optimum in the sense it is the ideal quantity of population. This is the limit. Beyond this, it is not permitted to have an extra population, right? And below that optimum limit also, you are not supposed to have a population, right? So optimum size of a population, which along with the existing natural resource and technology, yields the highest income per capita in a country. When you have a correct amount of population in a country, that means, I told you, the labor, one of the factors of production, it is dependent on population. Because when someone born, you can get an extra labor after 18 years of time, 15 years of time on an average. So the labor is dependent on population, right? So with the available natural resources, with the available technology, when you have an optimum population, each and every labor will yield more and more output. That is, all the labors are in a good way, they are utilized, all the natural resources, technology are utilized to the maximum possible way, right? So what happens when you use the available labor in a good way? The income per capita from each and every labor, the income will be more and more. Their efficiency is fully taken, right? But what happens when the population is more than the optimum population? That you can call it as overpopulation, right? So that I will deal later. Okay. So optimum population means the ideal population, the ideal number of people that the nation should have relatively to the natural resource which are available in their country. We have this many natural resource, this many capital, so we can have this much population only, because this can be utilized to produce some food grain that can be only used for this many population, not more than this population. That is why we need to follow a optimum population. So in this picture, now see the point OP0. The point OP0, it is the optimum population. Point OP0 is the optimum population. Now you go at the top of the P0. Okay, it connects at the point M. That is the point where the per capita output is the maximum. So you are supposed to have only OP0 population, that is optimum, where each and every labor will yield more and more output. And when it goes beyond P0, P2, it is the overpopulation. And at the same time, if you look at the top of the curve, the per capita output is getting declined. Each and every person will yield less and less. It is less utilized because you have only, say for example, 1000 kg of input. For 1000 kg of input, you can have only 100 labors to work for. But when the population increases, you will give 200 people to work for the same 1000 kg. So 200 people is doing the same work. So the labor force is getting wasted. So natural resources are getting wasted. Okay, this is one scenario that is called as overpopulation. Now you don't go for point P2, you go for point P1. That is, it is lesser than the optimum ideal population. That is lower population, or that is underpopulation, where you have more natural resources, you have very little labor force, very little labor force. So they cannot work. Many natural resources will get wasted here because these people can take only few available capital to produce something. So all the other natural resources and capital are getting wasted. That is, the capital are underutilized here because of underpopulation. So this is why the labor is dependent. The labor, the factor of production is dependent on the quantitative aspect of population. So here you can see, as I told you, the population of a country is below the optimum size. That is, here you can see OP1. That is below OP0. OP0 is the optimum. OP1 is the far below the OP0. So when it is below the optimum size, the country is said to be underpopulated, where you have more capital resources and less labor. That is why the capital resources are not fully exploited. It is wasted. It is not fully utilized. Many capital remains wasted. And overpopulation on the other sense, if the population is in excess of the optimum size, that is, here you can see OP2, it is more than the optimum size called OP0. So if it is more than that point, the population is more and the capital available is very less. What happens? You have less capital. So each and every person, as I told you here, you can see after the point M, the per capita output will come down. That is, each and every person can produce lesser and lesser of output. So that is what it is mentioned here. Average productivity will decline. That is average productivity in the sense productivity of each and every labor, right? Each and every labor. So this overpopulation and underpopulation scenario will happen if we don't have an optimum population. So that is what mentioned at the top. If not optimum population of OP0, either we may face OP2 situation, that is overpopulation, where the productivity will decline, that is per capita output will decline. And if not OP0, we may face the situation called OP1, that is underpopulation, where you have more capital, but you have less people, less labor to work on those capital. So the natural resources or capital resources are not fully exploited here. It is of wasted. So this is called as optimum theory of population. To have an expansion of some explanations, Dalton comes up with a formula, right? So what he has told, any deviation apart from that OM is the optimum here. He has taken OM. Here it is OP0. OM is the optimum population. Anything which is more than OM, it is overpopulation. You have to make some adjustments, right? Anything which is lesser than OM, that is underpopulation, right? So when you use this formula, there is M, that is small adjustment, that is extension of deviation. How much is extra from optimum population? How much is lesser from optimum population, right? But that is called a small adjustment. How much is extra than the optimum population is called overpopulation. How much is lesser than the optimum population is called as underpopulation. That is called as small adjustment. It is denoted by capital M. When this value is positive, okay, if this value is positive, that is you have more population, right? So then the country is said to be overpopulated. If the small adjustment value is negative, that means that it is very clear that the population is much lesser than the optimum population. That will explain the country is underpopulated. So here I have given an example here. If the actual population is 80 crores and the optimum is only 40, we have extra 40. That extra 40 is the small adjustment, right? So you need to identify how much is extra here. So you have to adopt this formula A minus O by O, where M is the small adjustment and A is the optimum size, right? So it is found to be 1, which is a positive sign. So when it is positive, it is called as overpopulated country, and when it is negative, the country can be said to be underpopulated country, right? So that's all for 2 theories. And the third theory is, it is of less importance, the theory of demographic transition. Okay, there is a phase. There are 3 phases of transition that you can experience in terms of growth of a population. It is a phenomenon and theory which refers to historical shift from high birth rate, high infant death rate in societies with minimum technology, education, and economic development. Everything is minimum. From here, there may be a transition to another stage called, just opposite to that stage, low birth rate, low death rate in societies with advanced technologies, education, good economic development, as well as stages between these 2 scenarios. You have both extreme stages and also the stages in between, that is called as second stage, that is A, pointed here as A, right? So at one point you have more population, at one point you have less population, right? In between also you have a stage. Okay, these 3 stages are called as demographic transition, right? Just to summarize what we have discussed so far, as I told you, Thomas Albert Malthus during 1798 in his book on the essay of Principles of Population, he has come up with a point, like he focused his attention on food production, just to compare this food production with the population, because population is dependent on food production. We can have enough population according to the available food grain production, like rice, wheat, fruits, vegetables, whatever it is, right? Food grains means rice, wheat, and the food production in general means you can add vegetables, fruits, etc. also, right? You have all the nuts, etc. that you can eat. So this population is highly depending on the available food grain production. Okay, and whereas optimum theory that they have focused on per capita output. They are telling like when country is overpopulated, the per capita output will come down. That is, the efficiency of a labor will come down, right? When it is underpopulated, you will have more capital available, but you have less people to work on the capital. So according to optimum theory, there is no rigidly fixed maximum population. And according to Malthus, again, famine, war, disease were the indicators of overpopulation. That is, these things only creates this thing. But the declining trend of per capita output would indicate the overpopulation as per the optimum theory. Optimum theory takes this trend of per capita as a measure of overpopulation, and Malthusian theory that takes famine, war, and disease. When these three things exist in a society, that means you can clearly tell it is overpopulated, because there will be a quarrel among people, there will be a fight for enjoying nature, enjoying the available resources, etc. Right? And in a funny way also, the same economist comes up with a point like he has compared man in our country, or normally in our universe, he has compared man with mice in the barnyard. Right? When we keep a mice inside a barnyard, what happens inside a godown, or even inside our own house also, when we keep mouse, it reproduces quickly than anything in the world, right? So what he is telling, he is comparing man with mouse. So man reproduces so quickly, like how mouse manages to do the same in a barnyard. But the power of land to produce food is very limited. The supply of land is, in economics, you can tell now, supply of land is limited. No, it cannot be increased. It may get decreased. You can damage a land by building by constructing a building. You can go for constructing industry. So the supply will come down. You can never increase the available land. So it is limited in supply. Once it is 8,000 lakhs hectares in a country, it will be 8,000 lakhs hectares always. It may come down. So we cannot produce like how mouse do in the barnyard. We have to restrict because we have limited supply of land, right? So that's all for today's class. I hope you all enjoyed this lecture. We all will have another discussion in the future course of time with some other interesting topic. Until then, it is bye from Thulasiram. Thank you.